Welcome back. Now, the news of Tessa Jowell's death came after the papers went to the presses, but we can start with our panel that we've managed to kind of wangle into our studio in the break by talking about her sort of life and legacy. We've got Michael Heaver of the website Westmonster, last year's Businesswoman of the Year, Fleur Sexton, and Lucy Fisher, who's the senior political correspondent at The Times. Thanks very much for being with us. Lucy, as a kind of woman working in Westminster, do you think Tessa Jowell was quite an inspirational figure to a lot of us?
Absolutely. You know, I knew Tessa a little bit. Obviously, she was a huge champion of women when she was Minister for Women, but also so kind to kind of many female MPs across the board, and also really welcoming to kind of young female journalists like myself. I think she embodied a softness while being incredibly articulate and having a kind of a core of steel. She was less kind of hard than I think perhaps an earlier generation of women had to be in Parliament.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, actually. I think that perhaps is something, so she's quite a sort of feminine, I can use that word feminine, I don't know, but she was quite a soft and feminine, friendly politician rather than some of the MPs that we're kind of more used to, I think. How do you think she came across there from someone who's kind of outside the Westminster bubble?
Well, I think, for me, the Sure Start programme, the fact that that is her legacy, you know, and something that she says how proud she was of that as well, I think that's really important for women. You know, what Lucy was saying about supporting women, I think that really comes across. You know, women in business, women in their careers, I think that was something that was really important to her and a fantastic legacy.
And you probably didn't share that many political similarities with Tessa, would it be fair to say? But at the same time, I think what struck me, actually, about the tributes this morning is there's such a lot of cross-party feeling towards her. She was someone who kind of worked across party divides on things like the Olympics to try and get stuff done.
That's it, yeah. Clearly a very decent human being, people saying that, you know, she got along with people across the aisle. And also, I think, what a legacy in terms of the Olympics. What a thing to have been a part of and played such a major role in. And it's an amazing piece of history that she was a part of after that.
Yeah, and a lot of people will really remember the things I went to at the Olympics, you know, lived in East London at the times. And what a kind of joyful piece of history to be a part of. I think a lot of politicians probably couldn't quite say the same thing. I think her dignity in death is something else that really struck me. You know, that amazing speech that she gave in the House of Lords about, like, living her life with lots of vigour, even though she had this diagnosis, really moving.
Absolutely. I mean, watching the footage of it this morning brought a tear back to my eye. I mean, dignity is the word, as you say, and talking about the uncomfortable facts around having cancer and not only sort of living with it, but looking at how you might die with it and kind of palliative care. I think addressing some of those really tricky problems that sometimes people like to shy away from in an ostrich about because they're so difficult.
Yeah, very important stuff. Now, the papers haven't got anything about her death in them because obviously it was announced this morning. So should we have a quick look at what else they are covering this morning? The Sunday Telegraph has got the headline, "Dozen Ministers Desert May on Customs." What's this story all about now?
Yeah, so we've got this so-called customs partnership, which has seemed to be a bit of a soft option that Theresa May is said to favour, and increasing opposition from her own ministers. The Telegraph saying about 12 of 28 individuals who sit in the Cabinet, but it could be as high as 15 actually oppose this. Very interesting as well, they've got a Remain voting minister quota saying if we're leaving, do it properly, backing the maximum facilitation option, that's what they call it, to basically ensure that the UK has a fully independent trade policy moving forward. Now, I think the customs partnership's dead anyway for the reason that Boris Johnson has called it crazy and Jacob Rees-Mogg has called it cretinous.
Yeah, but just because Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg don't like it, they're not Prime Minister, are they? So they can't just veto it, surely?
No, sure, but I'm coming from the aspect of Theresa May is in a quite vulnerable position, and if Boris Johnson, say, was to resign and Jacob Rees-Mogg was to turn his fire on the government, I think they'd be in big trouble. And I think where this is all heading, and obviously Theresa May has written a piece today as well, is can the government get their stated policy through Parliament? Because I'm not convinced. When you look at Conservative Remainers, there's about, let's say, about a dozen of them, plus the Lib Dems, plus Labour, plus the SNP, all opposing leaving the customs union. Theresa May today says to the public, a bit of a plea, I need your support. Can the government actually get through their Brexit policy? Because I'm not convinced, and I think we could be headed for general election.
Blimey. But please.
Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but that's how it is.
It feels like about 2 minutes since the last one.
Yeah, I know, right? But you know, it's a very interesting position of can the government get leaving the customs union? Now we've got Labour's position. Now we've got people like Anna Soubry and Dominic Grieve, Conservative MPs. If they vote to block that, the government, as I see it, cannot get their Brexit policy through the House of Commons. If they can't do that, we have to have an election.
Now let's put aside the kind of intricacies of Max Fac versus customs partnerships. On the surface, this sounds quite worrying if what you're saying is true, because we've had years now, a couple of years almost, to try and get our kind of ducks in a line. For a businesswoman, you must be looking at all this thinking, crikey, how am I going to cope if we haven't got a plan?
Yeah, I think the main thing for business is clarity. You know, pretty much anything can be worked with, but we do need the clarity to see what we're working with in order to make plans and really invest in the next few years. So I really think the focus has got to be on clarity, whatever that is, you know, just so we know what we're working with. So it is quite disruptive having constant movement of what's happening and we don't quite know. So,
what's your sort of insight? Do you think that there's one option that's been favoured more than the other, or is it just really impossible to tell at the minute?
Well, I think it's difficult because Theresa May has stated her preference in her Brexit War cabinet, a smaller committee of kind of key cabinet members for the customs partnership option. Ministers openly defied her in that meeting. There was a majority for the max VAC option. She's now sent 2 working groups out to kind of look at how they could rework, redevise either option so that it was more palatable. I think Michael's absolutely right. She's caught between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, she's got a number of very hardline Brexiteers, numbering around 60-odd, above the threshold needed, about 48, to trigger a leadership contest against her if she doesn't do what they want. On the other hand, in the Commons, the numbers are there for a softer Brexit, so she can't seem to force one way or the other.
Moving on from Brexit, sometimes it feels like this is all we get to talk about in these reviews. So I'm quite keen to talk about a couple of other stories I think we can do at the same time. So we've got the Sunday Times Rich List, which is celebrating the fact that the self-made rich are triumphing over old money with the kind of entrepreneurs building things from nothing. And then the Mail on Sunday have got this key Corbyn ally will bring the UK's wealthy elite to a shuddering halt. Now, that's John Trickett, who I also interviewed earlier on in the programme, who was basically saying that there's a rigged system, that the rich are getting richer and everyone else is losing out. What's your kind of feeling on it?
Well, no, look, I think Labour's anti-aspiration rhetoric, I don't like it at all. I think when you look at the rich list today, Jim Ratcliffe, who tops the rich list with wealth calculated at 21 billion. I mean, he's not done badly for himself.
Not to be sniffed at.
No, grew up in a councillor house and went to a grammar school. And I think that is an incredibly positive message. And actually, when the Tories talk about grammar schools and Theresa May talk about grammar schools, he's the type of person they should point to. There is someone who I believe, and under the present comprehensive system, who grew up in a council house. I don't think you'll see many people like under the current system go on to become billionaires. And I think grammar schools, you know, what a story, Jim Ratcliffe, that amount of money. And I think Labour are in the position now where they're becoming an anti-aspiration party when they should be championing things like grammar schools to help the poorest get on in life.
Do you think Labour's anti-aspiration?
I don't necessarily think it's anti-aspiration. I think it doesn't give the impression that they are necessarily supporting people to make these journeys, because these journeys are entirely possible. So I think what we need to do, whatever party it is, we need to be taking people like Jim and looking at how we can use this to fuel ambition, because one of the things he says that I think is fantastic is that he had this... It was this industrial society when he was at university, and they went out and they went to see the way manufacturing worked. And I think having these links between schools and businesses, role models, all this sense of work experience, it can really ignite passion and get people really excited about work. And I think those are the sorts of things we need to be focusing on and really getting young people and people who are unemployed. I mean, Jim was unemployed. He went into his first job and then apparently he was sacked because he had eczema and he couldn't work with chemicals, they said. And he was, he came from a council house. He didn't start his first business till he was 40. So all of these things that you would think would hold somebody back, I think we really need to be celebrating this journey and how possible it is for other people to go on this same journey, because that's a great thing for our country, the fact that you can do that sort of thing. It's life-changing and amazing.
Are things really getting harder? I wonder. I mean, in London, for example, there's a lot of really great school success stories in academies, for example, in difficult areas. What do you think? Sometimes we can be a bit gloomy about all this, can't we?
I think things are getting harder. I think there are different metrics, and the government obviously tends to point out jobs statistics are great, employment's at a record high, unemployment is at a kind of a record low, but wages have been squeezed for a long time now, and I think investment in the economy has been fairly poor. That said, I'm not sure that many people across the country would recognise John Trickett's picture of this as a kind of a society on the brink of revolt. And I think that is shown by the general election results in the past week. You know, in fact, Labour fell short of expectation and the Tory vote really held up. So while he's trying to kind of stir up a lot of agitation, and I think there is concern about inequality, there is concern about frozen and backsliding wages, it's not quite as serious a problem as perhaps Labour would like to make out.
Interesting stuff. Thanks very much for your thoughts on a big range of stories this morning. Thank you. Now, after the break, we've got something very unusual coming up. 2 politicians from different parties sitting around a table for a friendly chat. Don't miss our film about being a woman in Parliament.